nucleus of plant cell, one of the cell organelle which is most prominent and controls different metabolic activities and also responsible for hereditary activities is the nucleus. In case of plant cells, how nucleus is and what are the details that survey during this discussion we will take. So nucleus, one can say it as a heart of the cell, where almost all DNA of the cell is confined. It also gets replicated or is transcribed in the nucleus only. And this DNA is a genetic material. So the importance of nucleus lies here. It contains the entire amount of this hereditary material. Another name for nucleus is karyon, which is a Greek word. Nucleus serves as main distinguishing feature of eukaryotic cell. Nucleus is, in brief, we can define it as a membrane-bound structure that contains the cell's hereditary information and controls the cell's growth and reproduction. So almost all prominent activities are done by the nucleus related to the cell. In eukaryotic cells of plants as well as animals, nucleus is found almost in all cells. But some cells, eukaryotic cells, like mature shoot tubes of higher plants and mammalian erythrocytes, they do not contain nucleus. In such cells, nuclei are present during early stages of development. Mature mammalian red blood cells are without any nuclei and are called red blood corpuscles rather than cells. Prokaryotic cells of bacteria, they don't have true nucleus. Instead, there is single circular large DNA which remain in direct contact with the cytoplasm, as there is no nuclear envelope to such circular DNA in case of prokaryotes. Position of nucleus in the cell is a characteristic of cell type, and it is variable even. Usually nucleus remains located in the center, but its position may change from time to time and also according to the metabolic state of the cell. We can take example of embryonic cell, where nucleus generally occupies geometric center of the cell. But as cells start to differentiate, the rate of metabolic activities increases and displacement of the position of nucleus takes place. in cells, glandular cells, the nucleus remains located in the basal portion of the cell. Morphology of nucleus. So while discussing the nucleus morphology, one can describe it. Okay, what is the number of nuclei in the cell? Then secondly, what is the shape of the nucleus? What type of size, related to the size, one can describe. So while taking survey of morphology of nucleus, we will discuss first point, that is the number of nuclei in the cell. So usually it is single in one cell, but number may vary from cell to cell. So according to number of nuclei, types of cells have been recognized as mononucleate, binucleate, or polynucleate cells. Mononucleate cell contains single nucleus, are found in plant as well as in animals. Binucleate cells contain two nuclei. And such cells are called binucleate cells. For example, paramucium, or cells of cartilage and liver. Polynucleate cells. Such cells contain many nuclei and number varies from 3 to 100 even. And such cells which are having more than 2 nuclei, they are called polynucleate cells. Polynucleate cells are also termed as syncytial. Polynucleate cells of plants are known as cynocytes. One of the example of one alga named as Haucheria. So this Haucheria contains hundreds of nuclei. And another example of fungi, those fungi which don't have septum, so they also contain many nuclei. And the plant body or the cell is called as a cynocytic plant cell. Such cell is called as a cynocytic plant cell. So variation in number of nuclei per cell in the plants that we have seen, and in brief one can say cell may be mononucleate cell, may be binucleate having 2 nuclei, or maybe polynucleate having many nuclei in each cell. While discussing morphology of the nucleus, another aspect, that is shape of nucleus. So shape of nucleus normally remains related to the shape of the cell, but certain nuclei are almost irregular in shape even. The spheroid, cuboid, or polyhedral cells the nuclei of cylindrical, prismatic, or fusiform cells are ellipsoid in shape. One of the examples, cells of squamous epithelium contains discoidal nuclei. The third aspect of morphology relates with the size of the nucleus. So generally one can say that nucleus occupies about 10% of the total volume of cell. And the diameter of nucleus varies from 3 micrometer to 25 micrometer. And it depends on cell type and content of genetic material, content, that is diploid set of chromosomes, how it is. Depending on that, size of nucleus depends. We can say size of nucleus is directly proportional to the cytoplasm. Scientist named Hartwig has given formula for calculating size of the nucleus of particular cell. So this is the formula. NP means nucleoprotein index is equal to Vn upon Vc minus Vn, where Vn is volume of nucleus and Vc is volume of the cell. Size of nucleus is related with the number of chromosomes or ploidy level. Haploid cells contain small size nuclei in comparison to nuclei of diploid cells. Polyploid cells contain larger nuclei than diploid cells. Thus, size of nucleus of cell depends on volume of cell, amount of DNA, amount of protein, and metabolic phase of the cell. So this is the survey of morphology of nucleus. Now we will go towards ultrastructure of nucleus. So this figure is related with ultrastructure of nucleus, where you can see nuclear envelope. See, this nuclear envelope is made up of two layers, outer and inner. And in between these two layers there is a space and it is called as a perinuclear space. See, here you can see the space between the two layers. This is actually nuclear envelope, and space in between is called as a perinuclear space. See, in between here there is a nuclear pore through which there is communication of cytoplasm and the nuclear material or nucleoplasm. mRNA can come out through these pores and perform their function of protein synthesis. There is a viscous liquid and it is called as a nucleoplasm, chromatin material, and one more cell organelle named as a nucleolus is also there, and outer side of the nuclear envelope is in continuity with the endoplasmic reticulum, which is attached with the ribosomes, and therefore it is called as a rough-walled endoplasmic reticulum. So one by one we will see the details of ultrastructure of nucleus. So nuclear envelope is a nuclear membrane made up of outer membrane and inner membrane. Outer membrane, just we have seen, it is in continuity with the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Space in between we have seen, that is called as a perinuclear space, space between outer membrane and inner membrane of nuclear envelope. Call it as a perinuclear space. Nuclear envelope encloses nucleus and separates genetic material of the cell from cytoplasm of cell. It is actually barrier. It serves as barrier to prevent passage of macromolecules between nucleoplasm and cytoplasm. Then nucleoplasm. Space between nuclear envelope and nucleolus. It is filled up by transparent, semi-solid, granular and slightly acidophilic ground substance known as nuclear sap or nucleoplasm, or also called as a karyolymph. Nuclear components like chromatin threads and nucleolus remain suspended in the nucleoplasm. Nucleoplasm has complex chemical composition and is composed of nucleoproteins. Also contains inorganic and organic substances like nucleic acid, minerals and proteins. So this nucleoplasm, as it is having complex chemical composition, we will discuss one by one those chemical compositions present in the nucleoplasm. First is nucleic acid. So most common nucleic acid present in the nucleoplasm is DNA and then RNA. Both of them, they are macromolecules in the form of monomer nucleotides. Nucleoplasm also contains proteins and are complex proteins. And these nucleoproteins are categorized into two types as basic proteins and acidic proteins. Acidic proteins are also called non-histone proteins. Now about basic proteins present in the nucleoplasm. So basic proteins are the proteins which take basic stain. Most important basic protein of nucleus are nucleoprotamines and nucleohistones. Nucleoprotamines are the basic proteins having very low molecular weight. About 4000 Daltons is the molecular weight of these nucleoprotamines. Most abundant amino acid of nucleoprotamine is arginine, which is having pH value ranging between 10 to 11. These basic proteins, protamines, usually remain bounded with DNA molecules by salt linkage. Protamines, where they occur, that example is spermatozoa of certain fishes. Another basic protein present in nucleoplasm is nucleohistone. It is having high molecular weight as compared to nucleoprotamines, and this molecular weight is in between 10,000 to 18,000 daltons as compared to the molecular weight of nucleoprotamines is 4,000 daltons. Now, histones. Histones are composed of basic amino acids like arginine, lysine, and histidine. Histone proteins remain associated with DNA by ionic bonds, and they occur in nuclei of most organisms. According to composition of amino acids, two types of histone proteins are recognized. One, histone rich in lysine, histone rich with arginine, and third type is histone with poor amount of lysine. Now, non-histone or acidic proteins. Acidic protein either occur in nucleoplasm or in chromatin. The most abundant protein of euchromatin is phosphoprotein. Nucleoplasm contains enzymes necessary for synthesis of DNA and RNA. And most of the nuclear enzymes like DNA polymerase, RNA polymerase, NAD synthetase, nucleotide triphosphate, adenosine diaminase, nucleophosphorylase, enolase, aldolase, guanase, etc. are composed of non-histone proteins. In nucleoplasm, there is trace amount of lipid. Some minerals are also observed in the nucleoplasm like phosphorus, potassium, sodium, magnesium, calcium, etc. Nucleolus. See, this is that organelle, nucleolus, which is present in the nucleus. So many cells, they contain nuclei. In many cells, there is a prominent spherical colloidal acidophilic body called as nucleoli, which is present in the nucleus. But cells of bacteria and yeast, they lack nucleolus. Size of nucleolus is related with synthetic activity of the cell. It means cells with little or no synthetic activity, for example sperm cells, are found to contain smaller or no nuclei, while oocytes or neurons or secretory cells which synthesizes proteins contain comparatively large size nucleoli. Number of nucleoli in the nucleus depends on species and number of chromosomes. Number of nucleoli in cell may be 1, 2 or 4 even. Now chemical composition of nucleolus. Nucleolus is actually not bounded by any limiting membrane, but calcium ions are supposed to maintain its intact organization. Chemically, nucleolus contain nucleolar organizer, then different types of RNAs, 70S type of ribosomal protein, RNA binding proteins like nucleolin, RNA splicing nucleoproteins. Also, nucleolus contains phospholipids, orthophosphates, calcium ions even. It also contains some enzymes, for example phosphatase, nucleoside phosphorylase, NAD synthesizing enzyme for synthesis of some coenzymes, nucleotides and ribosomal RNA. RNA methylase enzyme is also there in the nucleoplasm, which transfers methyl group to nitrogenous bases. So these are some of the constituents in the nucleus, chemical constituents we have seen. So we have taken survey of ultrastructure of nucleus. And now, what is the function of nucleus? We have seen nucleus controls hereditary characteristics of any organism. It is responsible for protein synthesis, cell division, growth and differentiation of the cell even. So many important functions are carried out by the nucleus, and survey we will take here in brief. So nucleus stores hereditary material. So in the form of gene, so genes are there in the DNA, and this DNA, they are there in the chromatin material. Thus nucleus serves for storage of hereditary material. It also stores proteins and RNA even. Nucleus is site of transcription, in which messenger RNAs are produced from DNA, which are important for protein synthesis. Nucleus has its role in transferring hereditary characters. During cell division, chromatins are arranged into chromosomes in the nucleus. Production of ribosomes in the nucleolus is another function. Selective transportation of regulatory factors and energy molecules through nuclear pore occur. It is also a function of nucleus. Thus, one can say that nucleus regulates integrity of genes and gene expression even, and thus is a control center of the cell.